Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for From Recruiting to Retention, crafting a seamless employee journey from start to finish. My name is Kaylee Hansen. I'm the Marketing Campaigns Manager here at GoCo. I'm just so grateful for all of y'all taking some time to join Amber, Rachel, and I today. If you don't mind, let's do a little bit of get to know you in the chat and share where you are tuning in from. So I'm currently in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. The spring air is finally coming to life in Dallas, and it's no longer either extremely hot or freezing cold because Texas just can never make up its mind. What about you, Rachel? Where are you live from?
I'm in Pittsburgh, PA, and I saw at least one other Pittsburgher in the chat, so love that. Yeah, unfortunately, Pittsburgh has seen quite a roller coaster. There were snow squalls on Sunday, and now it is sunny and in the mid 50s. So it's, kind of just don't know what's up and down, but it is sunny right now. And as one of those areas that does not get a lot of sun, I am enjoying every second of it.
Well, it sounds like Pittsburgh is also pretty unpredictable, like it
Oh,
is here
yeah.
in Texas. Speaking of Texas, Amber, where are you live from?
Yeah, I'm actually curious what a snow squall is. I've never heard that before, but that is because I am from Texas, the greater Houston area, where if it is just a little bit of drizzle and below like 40 degrees, we're shutting down the entire city. And so we don't know how to handle snow like that, Rachel. That sounds intense.
The weird thing about a snow squall, it's kind of picture like if you've seen like a dust storm where it just like kind of picks up and it's swirling around. It doesn't necessarily like settle anywhere. There was a little bit of accumulation on the ground, but it's really fun when you're driving and it's just kind of like an instant whiteout kind of a thing. So it's not great, but it also like comes in and out very quickly. So that's my best. I'm not a meteorologist though, so please do not fact check me later.
Well, I'm learning something new. I love that. I couldn't do that. No way. Uh, I am a Texas girl through and through. When it's 40 degrees, I shut down as well. So thank you all again for joining us and sharing where you're from in the chat. Looks like we have people from all over, and we are just so excited to go through this with you today. So a little bit of housekeeping. Just wanted to let everyone know that at the end of the webinar, I will share the SHRM and HRCI codes for credit. Additionally, after the webinar concludes sometime this week, I will send out the slides as well as the recording. And if you have any questions at all during the webinar, please feel free to put them in the chat and make sure that the little 2 in the chat is to everyone and not just to hosts and panelists, so everyone can see what you have to contribute. Before we get started, just wanted to do a little bit about GoCo and a little bit about JazzHR. So GoCo is a all-in-one HRIS, and we really focus on giving you as an HR professional back more time in your day so you can focus on what matters instead of doing small admin tasks, which are your people. And then I can't talk about GoCo without talking about our incredible client success team. At GoCo, each client gets its own dedicated support team to help you with any questions, implementation, training, etc. for your time with GoCo. And then Rachel, do you mind giving a little bit about JazzHR?
Absolutely. So Jazz HR is a part of Employee Solutions. And so we are an applicant tracking system that is focused on small and mid-sized businesses. So how do you get started in recruiting right away? There's a lot of pain points if you are a small company trying to get folks to join your team. And so there's a lot of tools and automations in Jazz HR to make it as seamless as possible for you. We are spread out all across the globe. And as you can see from stats and logos there, spanning a lot of different industries and able to help people hire faster.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rachel. And a great little fact is that JazzHR and GoCo actually integrate seamlessly into each other, so you can get the benefit of both. And then let's meet our speakers today. Amber, do you mind going into a little bit about your history and background and why you're here today?
Absolutely. I do want a +1 on Jazz HR. It has personally made my life pretty easy. So my name is Amber Anzalone. I'm our People Operations Manager at GoCo, and the joy of my work is getting to focus on all things people. Before my time at GoCo, which I've been here about a year and a half now, I actually spent about 15 years in the finance industry within the credit union sector specifically, where I did marketing and business development, really learned that I loved people, just internal people, as opposed to spending my time externally. And I was able to really just transition into the HR world and get to find ways to brand and enhance our employee experience. And so love the employee journey in all aspects of it. So I'm really excited to be here today. But what about you, Rachel?
Yeah, so my background is very much in customer world, and I spent the past 3.5 years at JazzHR. And my focus as manager of enablement is everything related to the post-sale process. So making sure that customers are onboarded successfully, making sure they're getting the resources for ongoing training and support for their entire team so that they can really utilize everything that's included within their JazzHR subscription. So we've got an awesome team. We love teaching about best practices and obviously just how to use the system to its fullest.
Perfect. Well, thank you both so much. I'm so excited to have you both here today. And with that, let's get started. So the first bit of this presentation and this Q&A is going to start at the very beginning of the employee journey, which is the recruitment phase. So Rachel, can you let me know a little bit about how organizations can effectively leverage recruitment tools to really streamline candidate sourcing and just the assessment process as a whole?
Absolutely. So I think before we can even touch the tools and streamlining and everything like that, you really have to stop and assess what are you looking for in an applicant. So taking time to build out that job description, not only what a candidate is going to do in the role, but also what you're looking for, whether that's specific qualities about them, skill sets, anything like that. I like to kind of think of it a little bit like online dating. So if you're going in totally blind and you don't really know what you're looking for, you're probably going to have a hard time narrowing down candidates. But if you can, put some filters in place and, maybe narrow in, it might not necessarily be geographically in a candidate perspective if you can hire remotely. But what are those kind of aspects that you can do to help narrow that down? And I think just starting there is going to help be a lot more successful than you'll already have, kind of a lot more tailored candidates to what you're actually looking for in the role.
I love that. Amber, do you have anything that you were wanting to add?
Yeah, I think that when we think about, I love to give action-based ideas or insight. And so when we think about being a small HR department or a small recruiting team, the thing that I always love to encourage is to lean in on those hiring managers and get their help. When we think about talking about those red flags, there's also green flags when you can really align with that hiring manager and you can ask specifically, what is it that you're looking for? What are the buzzwords that you want me to call out? Or do you want this person to be experience-based or do you want them to be coachable? Really asking those really specific questions. At GoCo, we actually have a process called the role requisition form. We do it through our workflow process and we ask our hiring managers to fill it out, and it might feel a little cumbersome sometimes, but what it allows is for our people team to really take everything that they need up front and then design out that role when we launch it, to really streamline and to field out as much as we can so that we're getting really, really relevant applicants in that process. So love that process for us.
Perfect. I love that. And I love the idea of thinking about it like speed dating or online dating. It's a great example that a lot of us can relate to. So let's go on to the next question. So on the flip side, let's talk about pain points a little bit. So what are some common pain points in that recruiting process and how can solutions, whether they be technology, people, etc., address issues like bias in the hiring process as a whole? Rachel, do you want to kick this one off again?
Sure. Yeah. The first thing that jumps out at me is just consistency. So we want to create an equitable experience across all of our candidates, whether they are the first applicant or the 150th applicant. Wherever you're at in the hiring process, make sure you have that kind of consistency. There's a lot of ways within, JazzHR and specifically where you can build out interview guides that you're using for every single applicant. You're using candidate scorecards so that you have kind of like a secret voting, and then you're not going to see those results until everyone has filled it out. So again, what are those ways that you can be able to provide that feedback? And I think another thing too, and that's kind of like our internal pain points, but then when we look at the actual applicants, I think, not to throw out another online dating term, but ghosting is going to be a big part of that. So if you're missing out on those opportunities just to re-engage with a candidate and just let them know, the common courtesy of saying, hey, we're not moving forward with you is so big. I know there's a lot of stats out there that, candidates are always going to have an impression of your organization. And so making sure that if it's a really bad thing, they'll probably tell about it. If it's a really good thing, they'll also probably tell their friends about it. And so what are those things that can help, kind of maximize your brand? And a huge part of that is just going to be communication with those applicants.
No, I love that. And ghosting in the workplace, both on the company side and really the talent side, is huge.
Mm-hmm.
We've even done webinars dedicated to just that topic before. So I'm really grateful that you touched on that, Rachel. Thank you. Amber, is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, a couple things that I think that we have learned through our experiences is we on the internal side love assessments, right? Because they're great to be put up front and to really learn more about the applicant ahead of time. But we actually have received feedback. And my advice to you is also to do the same, is to hear what your applicants are saying, and even the candidates going through the process, even following up, or once you're onboarding, asking them to really evaluate that experience of what was it like for them, and then modifying. Because we do assessments, and we actually got feedback that for some people it was actually creating a bias, and we had to address that and what really worked through it. So just always being mindful that no way is the perfect way. There's no one size fits all, and so just adapting as best as you can in those environments.
Yeah, and just to add on to that as well, I think something that we don't even realize as a pain point for our candidates is the information we are withholding from job descriptions from time to time. So whether that's not being explicitly clear if it is, a fully remote, or it is kind of a hybrid situation. It's like, no, you can work from home a couple of days a week, but we need you to come into the home office, or some sort of pay range or some sort of specificity that lets me know, am I managing people in this role? Is this, requiring, am I working on a team? Am I an individual contributor? So we have to be careful. We're so used to these roles and the job descriptions and everything like that, and kind of taking a step back and looking at it from the candidate's perspective, because we're not trying to waste their time either in this process, right? We know what, we hear the stories of that from that perspective as well. And so what are things that we can just be a little bit more specific about that's going to help create a much stronger experience?
I love that. That part you mentioned is really interesting to me, about thinking about it from the candidate's perspective, because as someone who is looking for, or people who are looking for jobs, they're looking for main points that they want to know. They want to know how much they're going to make. They want to know what their day-to-day is going to be like. They want to know what their main tasks and what their future goals are going to be. So I love that tidbit. So thank you so much, both of you. Rachel, I'm actually going to go to just you for this question, if this is okay. I'd really love to hear some insights from you on how technology-driven solutions have really revolutionized talent acquisition strategies as a whole in this very digital age that we're living in, and really how these solutions really help organizational success overall.
Yeah, absolutely. So many of the customers that we meet with JazzHR are truly those really small business, sometimes even categorized as very small businesses, that might not even have someone with an HR title on their team. And so they are hustling, they are wearing all of those different hats. And so many of them are just working out of their inbox. They have a, form on their website or maybe they don't even have a form. They just say, email HR to submit a resume application. And there's so many just small things that I think they don't even realize the time that they are doing on these manual tasks versus utilizing an applicant tracking system. And so there's a lot of manual things that are happening out there, and just some quick ways. I mean, within JazzHR, I think templates being one of the main ones. I mentioned interview, kind of creating interview guides for your team to create that consistency, but also just from a time-saving thing is these email templates. You're saying the same thing, how to prepare for this next interview. What does this third round look like? What are all those different things? You could just have them pre-written in there, saved. It's going to save you a lot of time. And again, adding to what I was just saying in the last answer, it's creating a better conversation part, and you're able to close the loop with candidates rather than, okay, which is the other thing? And the other thing with that too is automations. And so in doing things in bulk, I would say both of those, again, saving time. It's not necessarily about sending off a one-off email. You can do that in bulk. You've hired for the role. Great, let's close out the role and let's communicate with all the other applicants. And it's just a couple quick clicks to do that. And so it's saving you time, and probably actually creating a process. Because I know some people too, they don't necessarily even have a defined process yet. They're like, oh, well, it depends on the hiring manager. Oh, it just depends on, what the role is like. It's like, what does that mean? What is that something you can kind of discuss and outline as an organization? And I think having an applicant tracking system like JazzHR is a great way to help shape that and create that process for your team so that you can clear up brain space to do all the other things that are on your plate.
All the other things, exactly. We
Yeah.
love saving time however we can. So I love that. Next question. I'm actually going to go to Amber for this one first, if you don't mind, Amber. So in what ways can an HRIS platform really enhance the onboarding experience, even especially for remote employees? We're living in such a remote world. So we've gone from this recruitment process, finding the talent, finding the right people, now to the onboarding.
Well, this is going to come as no surprise to anyone, but I would actually reiterate what Rachel said, which is communication and consistency. And even whenever she touched on saying, like, what are all of the things that the job description does not say? What are all of the things that the new employee, think about when you were in that position, the new employee is also thinking, what are all of the things that I do not know? So what we love to do is really utilize our HRS system as a way to build out this onboarding journey, especially in a remote environment, because now you don't have that face-to-face human interaction where it feels a little okay to be uncomfortable. You're kind of doing it through a screen of, okay, well, what can we do to kind of eliminate as many barriers as possible before they start? So that means getting all of their equipment set up before day one, not on day one, but before day one, making sure that they have someone available as a resource if they need help or troubleshooting, ensuring they have all of those supplies, and then giving them consistent communication throughout that process leading up to it. We have a 4-week, 3-week, 2-week, 1 week, 1 day, and then day of communication plan where we are constantly sending messages, emails, just really exciting information. It's not just one-liners. We use emojis. We're really playful. And then, of course, day of, what's one of the things that people worry about? Well, lunch. Where are you going to eat? When are you going to eat? And how are you going to do it? Well, that's just something even as simple as lunch is a worry sometimes that people get nervous about on day one. So we make sure that we provide lunch for them on that first day digitally. So there's always all of these elements that you can think through of their experience now that they're not a candidate anymore and they're becoming an employee, thinking about that employee experience and all of those different steps. And you'll hear me say it a million times, I'm sure, throughout just this call. Processes. They are so important, not just for that employee that is onboarding, but for the people operation or for whatever your HR team is, what their processes are, what the hiring manager processes are, what the team onboarding processes are. I mean, you want to have these for everyone so that everyone knows what their role is that they're playing as this onboarding journey is taking place. And I know that I kind of went on a tangent there, so I'm sorry. But then the other elements, I again want to go back to those actionables, right? So asking people to send welcome emails before they even start, asking the interview team to celebrate them joining and saying, oh my gosh, we heard you, we accepted the offer, we're so excited to have you. Aligning them with an individual that they can connect with before day one so that when they show up for orientation, they already know someone in that virtual room and it's not just a bunch of new people. We love, love, love to have our talent acquisition partner on our onboarding call because she is a familiar face that everyone feels so comfortable with because they've spent so much time with her. So just little things like that to really think through what could help alleviate some of those pressures on the first day are what we love to take into consideration.
I don't have many additional things to add to that, but just to reinforce, I will admit an internal JazzHR fail that we had, and that was as we were switching things around internally with our HRIS system, it got miscommunicated or not communicated that that email was no longer being sent from HR, then it should be sent from the hiring manager. And that was something that we didn't realize until we got into that situation of someone saying like, I didn't know when to start, or like, when is these things happening? And again, that's, something where, we've owned that and set that up now, but hearing the idea of that kind of like email campaign you have with them, like, is so exciting. And I love that because I know that that would mean the world to me as a new hire as well. And just how much that would help to have a better start at an organization.
No, I love that because first day for anybody can be very scary. So preparing beforehand to just make your new employee feel so welcome on the first day, not like just the first week throughout the week, like on the first day, they just feel so welcome is huge. So thank you both ladies for going into those ideas and those descriptions. I really appreciate it. We're going to go on to the next question now, which is also on onboarding. So Amber, can you provide some examples on how digital onboarding practices, such as, virtual mentorships or like really interactive trainings on their first day, first week, etc., have really positively impacted employee retention rates, not just at GoCo, but just your thoughts in general?
Yeah, and I'll also go back and answer a little more to the last question because I think I also missed the performance management segment. So I'll give you examples on that too. What we actually started at GoCo was a 30, 60, 90-day process, meaning that through the people operations team, we would check in with that new hire 30, 60, 90 days. That was part of their onboarding journey. Those were some of the technology-driven solutions. But then what we quickly realized was thinking about the hiring manager process, it wasn't aligning to the performance management of that employee for delivering those interactive trainings that were relevant to their role, to their department, and what they were going to be doing. So now we are starting to implement a 30, 60, 90-day onboarding process specifically driven by the hiring manager, and it focuses solely on the employee's performance. So the first 30 days, they're kind of getting to know their team, they're getting to know the business and their role, and then they're going to have a discussion about performance or about gaps within either role expectations or the role responsibilities and realign and reassess. And they're going to do that all the way through their first 3 months with the business, and then have a true performance assessment, which for some you might be saying, well, we already do that. Well, and that's fantastic. We're catching up and we're excited to be there. But in having those really intentional conversations, you're allowing the employee to then join on and feel like, oh, they see me, they hear me, my voice and my feedback is valued. So they're being asked questions of how can we make this better from the people operations aspect and from their job performance team aspect, in addition to being paired up with a buddy for that virtual mentorship we talked about, where they have this other person that they get to work with. Kaylee is actually a virtual mentor for one of our employee experience coordinators on the HR team. So we're crossing departments, we're getting that cross-departmental interaction. And our drive in doing all of these things is how do we really get this person as deeply ingrained into the organization throughout this process as much as possible. So we're trying to do the cross-departmental, we're thinking about all these different aspects. And then what we love to do is when they give good feedback that we're able to take action on, we like to circle back and say, hey, you gave us this suggestion. We wanted to let you know that we're actually implementing it. So bam, now they're seeing my voice has impact. It's not just asking for my voice. Now I'm actually seeing the results of what I've done by sharing it. And I know that that's a lot. And if you're an HR department of one, that might sound so much, right? What you could do is automate some of these processes to collect this feedback and then go slowly and say, hey, thank you for taking the time to fill out that survey. It's on my list and I want to get to it. I may not have any immediate actions for you right now, but I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you. You can automate that message, but what you're then telling that person is you're slowing down their journey to say, I see you, I hear you, and I appreciate you. And that's going to really help to build that. And you can go at whatever pace is best for your business.
Yeah, I think, and yes, thumbs up to everything you just added there. Adding on to, I know for me from as like the hiring manager's perspective, I really like to create that ownership right away. And you kind of touched on that without necessarily saying that word, but how do you create that ownership and how do you allow them to feel like a valuable part of the organization right away? And I think a lot of that goes with kind of moving between, they're probably going to sit in a lot of like lecture style trainings, right? That's going to be, but what can we do from a hands-on perspective? What things can we allow them to do solo and kind of dive in, which is going to help us, learn a lot about their learning styles as well. And what are some of those hands-on things? So I know something that I've tried to do is doing as many kind of like sample projects, sample questions to answer. We're a customer facing team that I'm working with. And so, if a customer asks this, how do you respond? And those help because they're going through it themselves. They are internalizing it. They're able to participate right away. Is been really, really incredible to see with our team and has allowed folks to get onboarded a lot quicker in the process. But yeah, also articulating, right, what are those expectations at those different points, whether 30, 60, 90, or once you reach certain levels, it might not be a specific date range and that's okay too. But what are those things and celebrating along the way and reminding them where they started. I know for me, I hate being a beginner. That is probably one of my flaws. It's awful because I just want to be an expert immediately. And I'm sure you're going to have to run into some other teammates that do have that kind of similar drive. It's hard, but again, celebrating those little victories. And to Amber's point, you can automate those. You can, it can just be how you word it and how you ask for that response and that feedback, but let it be, a celebration of all they've been able to accomplish.
I love that so much. One thing that we do here at GoCo that I really appreciated when I first started is we do Clifton strengths. So we each take our little test that tells us what our strengths are, and then I'm able to look at my team members' strengths and see, where they thrive compared to where I thrive. And then that way, that really, especially that first week, really helps me get to know my team members and who I'm working with and how they learn, how they grow, how they thrive. And then in return, they can know how I learn and grow. So that was just one thing that I also wanted to add in that I think really helped when I started here at GoCo a year and a half ago. It's crazy that it's been that long, but I love it. So let's go on to the next question. And Rachel, I'm actually going to go to you for this one first. So we have recruitment, we have onboarding, but we've talked a lot about 30, 60, 90, and even further on. So employee development as a whole, how can organizations really create personalized development pathways for employees that ultimately really leads to just high level of satisfaction and ultimately end goal retention?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not proclaiming to do any of this perfectly. Let me just start by laying the groundwork there. But I think at the very least, it's making sure conversations of development are happening on an ongoing basis. So if you're the kind of team that has weekly one-on-ones, or even bi-weekly or whatever, that should be a pretty regular part of the conversation. Is the team member aware of where they're at in terms of, growth patterns? Do they know what's coming up next? I know in a lot of the interviews I've done for, bringing people on my team, they're asking me in the interview what the growth path is. Sure, they're interviewing for this job, but they're already thinking 2 jobs ahead. And so it does take a little bit of preparation in that, and you're probably not going to have all the perfect answers, and that's okay. It's awesome for us to be a part of kind of a larger organization with employee, because we've also seen growth not only between teams, but also across our brands too, which is also really great and provides even more of an opportunity for our employees as well. So talking about that, not being afraid of that, and being prepared to answer. And again, being honest, being transparent about it with any of these things is really where you need to start. If there's not a specific pathway, and I know for us, certainly a lot of those growth roles also just has to do with business need. So it's not that, they're not doing excellently or they're not whatever, but what are those ways that we can kind of fill that in with them as well? But just having that conversation and making sure they're aware of that and they know where their standing is throughout the year, not just at, kind of an annual review phase.
Yeah, I love that. And, I love that you also touched on saying that being vulnerable and transparent about what's available. And, the way that you can also think about taking that information and being honest, because you want to always level set expectations, is to then go on to say, we don't have anything available for you to grow upward right now or expand in that way. But let's think about how we can get you to expand this way and how we can really take things to the next level to enhance you as an individual. And then you really get to think about that skill-based learning for them specifically. And what we actually do at GoCo when we start through the on part of our onboarding process, we do this for our hiring managers, is we ask the employee we have something called employee development plans, and we issue every individual an individual development plan. And the first page is essentially an employee profile, where we're asking them to fill out all of these different things about them. How do they like to learn? What is their communication style? What are their top 5 strengths? What are their aspirations in 3 months, 6 months? And really, it's just this opportunity for the employee to complete a self-assessment about what their expectations are from their journey with the business. But then also it really allows that hiring manager to learn more about that individual so that they can manage them correctly. Clifton Strengths is such a great call out, Kaylee, because what's really valuable in that is we have resources that say, hey, look, this is what the basement and balconies of Clifton Strengths looks like. Meaning that if they're a person who loves to learn, they're going to want to talk all about learning. But the downside to that means that they're going to give you way more information than you probably need to answer that one question. And so it's really helping you then deal with those communication barriers. And as a manager, or even as someone that's in an HR department, that's going to be really helpful to help you manage that conflict. But we have found a ton of value in first building out that personal profile to really learn about the individual, and then beginning to talk about, okay, so I noticed you have a lot of passion in this area, or you actually did this in your previous role. How do you think we can align that to this position that you're doing now? Asking the question, if you want to simplify it down for a smaller group, ask 2 questions. What energizes you about your job? what de-energizes you about your job. You will get so much valuable insight, and you'll get it from your managers, you'll get it from your leadership team and the employee itself, to really start thinking about how you can then expand their skill set to figure out where they need help. Because typically the things that de-energize them are the things that they're not great at. And that's really where you can think about how to build that pathway for them in those avenues.
Love that. I know anytime that energize, de-energize comes up on our performance reviews, it really makes me, sit back and think about what's making me happy, what I want to do to better improve myself and my position at GoCo. And so that question always is a thinker. So I love that you mentioned that. Now we are going to go into securing buy-in. So both of you have talked about such amazing ideas and solutions, both personal and tech-based, but there's always going to be a question of, can we even do this? Will our leadership allow us to put these into effect? So Amber, do you mind starting off and talking a little bit about how HR professionals can really both maintain and secure buy-in from that C-suite perspective?
Yes. So I have that marketing background, right? So I'm going to really leverage that right now. And anyone can be a marketer. Okay. If you care about something and you've ever said you've enjoyed it, you just marketed it. So you can do this. Not any downplay to the significance of the marketing role at all, Kaylee. So sorry, that was the HR in me. But what I would say is, really think about who you are delivering the information to, who you are trying to get that buy-in from, who is your audience, right? And then tailoring your message to that person. If you're going to come to your CHRO, talk about that experience, talk about how you can utilize the data that can come from it to drive down, to increase retention, or to drive down turnover, or to make your recruiting process time to fill go even faster. Think about leveraging the things specific to that department. If you want to think about advertising to a CFO, talk about the ROI of how much it actually is going to save us if we're able to retain these employees based off of more efficient practices and optimizing our operations within the business. Just thinking about who you're advertising that message to, and really catering it to that individual. That's always going to really, really help you out. Our CEO is a ideation. He loves to dream. He has big ideas and he loves people. So I always talk about employee experience with him. And that is how I know it's going to hit home on anything that I need of value. And so it's just really knowing who you're talking to. But the other big aspect of that is simplify the process and simplify the message. These are individuals typically who are just inundated with information because they're thinking about the operational efficiency of the business constantly, right? And so they're all over the place. So how can you really simplify the message that you want to deliver to them? And then lastly, I love to always take into consideration of what are some of the milestones and celebrations, and how can you get them to be a part of that, to own it, right? So, hey, we had this our employee engagement score hit this goal. I want you as the CEO to share this message to the business. It's because you approved this function that we now get to hit these incredible numbers. I need you to celebrate that message. And so you're getting them to take ownership. There's that word. And just really, really have them gain that buy-in through involvement in a simplified way. But that's just the C-suite and aspect for me. But what about you, Rachel?
Yeah, before I hit on kind of the internal employee buy-in, I can't miss an opportunity to also have a think like a marketer kind of conversation, because I also started my career in marketing. And so that is very much also at the heart of what I do, and something that we talk about a lot from the JazzHR side. Thinking back to our first question we talked about today, was talking about the actual job description and what are you trying to distill out of there? But that's an advertisement. Your job description is an advertisement. Certainly anything that's on your website, on your social media, whether that's talking about, your pillars, beliefs as an organization, those things that you are passionate about, that's going to come out in what you're saying. So just know that job descriptions as well, even though they might be written by HR and not by marketing, are absolutely still a marketing piece. So can't miss out on that opportunity. But yes, creating that buy-in from your employees. New technology can be really intimidating and overwhelming. Even for folks that grew up as digital natives and has been learning new technology since day one of life, it's hard and it's overwhelming, especially if it's a switch or if you never had that platform before. And we get that. And that is part of the reason I really love the JazzHR product so much, because it's really easy to use and get started. But we're also not going to let you do it alone. And so in years past and working with my teams, I've seen some of our, some of the HR directors we're working with, they are just so excited and so passionate about it. And they want to show their team everything. And I have to stop them and slow them down a little bit and say, okay, well, let's talk about your hiring managers. Are they going to be the ones opening the recs? Are they going to be the ones directly communicating with candidates? If not, let's not show them that part of it. And it's hard and they're sad and they're like, oh, but it's so fun and I want them to see it. I know you do. I know you're passionate about it, but too much information is going to be overwhelming. So if your main thing is to help them fill out interview guides, let's cover that. Let's make sure they know from start to finish where to find the guide, how to fill it out, timing, all of that stuff. Let's focus on just what those roles need. Now, within your, HR team, you're probably going to be the experts on everything, right? So you are going to need to know all the ins and outs and nitty gritty, but just keep in mind, sometimes too much information is not a good thing and they will get overwhelmed. So distill it just to, and I know someone threw that in the chat as well. Distill the exact information they need to be a part of. Use that to start and navigate your conversation. Again, we love the energy and we love the excitement, but you're going to lose them before you even get to your point two if you're trying to tackle too much.
I love that because I feel like a lot of the times when we think about, securing buy-in, we really just think about it from that leadership perspective, and that perspective is really, really important and really huge. But you do also have to think about the people who are going to use it day to day and the people who are going to be impacted. So thank you both for touching on both parts of that question. Next, we are going to talk about ROI. So, Amber, I know you touched on this a little bit with your C-suite discussion, but can organizations really effectively measure ROI of different investments that we talked about, of things we talked about during this entire chat: acquisition, onboarding, retention, etc.?
Yeah, I think it's going to always go back to like relying on the numbers and letting the numbers speak for themselves. And, when you partner with these right technology software platforms that have automated reporting or automated data that's readily available to you, taking that to them and then really just leaning in on that information and making it available for them to address and own is where you want to land it. We have this unique opportunity in HR to really collect conversational information, right? And then you get to take that back and say, well, this is what I'm hearing that it's really making a big difference, or this is what I think we actually should do. And this is where I think we should focus because I hear the people say this or they say that, right? That's where we want to try to get away from that and really start to leverage using all of the data to drive those numbers and prove that through the numbers, because the numbers you can't argue with the numbers. And that's really where you want to focus that effort.
Yeah, I think from the recruitment side of that too, it's reassessing as you go. So again, even when we're talking about employees, it's one thing to have that conversation once a year. It's another thing to allow that be an ongoing conversation. And same goes for recruitment. And where are you seeing roadblocks? Where are candidates falling off? Where is one part of the process just taking weeks when it should only be taking days? And so paying attention to those reports within JazzHR, you can have reports scheduled to come to your inbox on a regular basis. So if you are like me, I need to set up a million reminders for myself because I will forget to do things, but I have my handy dandy reminders so I won't forget. And so I can get those directly in my inbox and I can take a look and go, oh yeah, why is it taking us 2 weeks to schedule, the second interview? Okay, maybe we should implement a tool like Calendly where we can create some automation to it, or, different things like that, whether it's just pulling in different technology, but utilizing what you have. And again, you'll be able to directly measure that. And we talked too, getting feedback from the candidates, whether or not you move forward with them, especially those that have gone through several steps in the process. That is going to be really huge as well. But yeah, there's lots of, kind of reports and goodies built right in there, and to pay attention to those. It doesn't mean you're going to be revamping and creating a brand new system every single time, but when you've already built out kind of the skeleton of your workflow, you're going to be able to adjust and make those changes and be a lot more nimble than if you, first of all, don't have a process, so you don't really have something to tweak. Or if you're just saying like, throw everything out, start over, like what are those, little things that you can do to help create a better experience and to help kind of speed up that time to hire.
I love that. I'm going to go a little bit off script for a second, if that's okay. But Rachel, you mentioned Calendly. Are there any other little tools that y'all use day to day that just completely save your life as an HR professional, customer success professional?
Yeah, I mean, I think Calendly takes the cake in a lot of ways. That is also the tool that we utilize for any of our new customers coming into JazzHR to schedule onboarding calls. And they're able to see they're signing up today and they say, oh, look, there's an availability tomorrow at noon. Great, I can already have my first call. And so honestly, I don't even know. We've always had Calendly as long as I've been at Jazz, but I don't know how they did this before that. I really don't. You know, you pick up the call, hey, are you available? It's like you're scheduling an interview again. And I'm thinking like, we can't do that. We have to eliminate that. And so just those little things. And I mean, I would challenge y'all to, you know, do a quick Google if you don't even know like what the name of something would be, or there's probably an app for that. There's probably something. What I love about Calendly too is that there's a free plan to get started. So it's not always about dollar amounts. I know I love too. We have that free integration with JazzHR. And so there's nothing, you know, you're able to start utilizing that like right away. But yeah, that one, I honestly don't know how my team could do their job without it.
I love that. What about you, Amber? Are there any tools that you just swear by?
What's funny is I've actually started utilizing Calendly internally. So I do people ops. It syncs with our employees. So I have office hours essentially, and I'm even utilizing that in an internal basis. So it's so far stretched. I think that the resources that we utilize are more directed towards employee experience of like engagement and recognition. So we really get to see how people are feeling whenever we implement new initiatives based off of some of our partnerships. Like we use a program called Hey Taco, where you can give a taco emoji and it is almost currency, and they utilize that currency to redeem it for GoCo swag. So we're reinforcing the brand of having them then wear our swag on calls. But if we launch something new and we get a ton of really exciting emojis and tacos given out, we know that it went over really well. And if there's really low participation, that's a great way, just really a quick touch point for us to see and measure engagement of, that message didn't go over so well. Let's reassess and see what we can do to try to reevaluate and see where things maybe didn't go over as well as we had hoped that they had. So, and that is something specific to Slack, but you could also implement that into your own business, right? Like, hey, we're starting this new thing. We're going to start utilizing this emoji for whatever your mascot of the business is. We use the Hey Tacos, but coconuts are also very popular at GoCo because we were named after a coconut drink. So whatever works best for your business, just thinking about fun resources and Googling it to say, hey, how can I figure out this thing? Don't reinvent the wheel. There's a ton of free stuff out there. All you have to do is ask that, or I personally like ChatGPT. I would encourage you to use that and ask them to give you ideas and then take all of the credit for it.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you both, Rachel and Amber. I always like to just throw that in because the more resources and tools that we can learn about, the better. And yes, when in doubt, just Google. There have been some just great resources that I have found from just Googling a very loose description, what I think I'm trying to find. So thank you both so much. All right, so we have the last question in our main presentation, but I do have a couple other little Q&As to share with y'all afterwards. But looking holistically, how do you create an employee journey that meets the need of your organization and of the individual? So Amber, do you mind kicking this one off?
Yeah, I think that everything is going to take its own lens, but it should always be viewed with a foundation that is, this is the process that we're going to run with. How do we then cater it to the needs of the individual? Making sure that you still have that consistent process that Rachel actually spoke to earlier. Consistency is just a beautiful word. I have a nickname called Accountability Amber, right? I think that we just always want to have these things to fall back on so people don't ever have any ambiguity in what they're doing. But then leveraging that to then go on to think about what the individual experience is, whether it's a hiring manager. Okay, so as a hiring manager, how do I really think about this journey for this individual? Or as an employee, how do I think about this journey and what their needs are going to be? Or generationally, right? We have a lot of different generations in the space. How do I then think about, let's just say, onboarding of like what their tech savviness might be? For some, they may want this right here for me to read every single line of how to do a process. That might be how they best learn. Others might want to read the information or watch a video. It just depends. It's just being mindful of what that individual is and trying to think through those different groups and those different environments, and then connecting them to the points that will help them be most successful.
Yeah.
Did that cover it?
Yes.
No,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was perfect. Rachel, do you have anything that you were wanting to add to that?
Yeah, I know for me as a manager, I'm getting pretty constant feedback from my team. I love getting to leverage them and their skills to speak to it too. So sure, I might be the one that has more of like the foundational knowledge, but them actually like getting in there and getting into the weeds and creating a quick slide deck or doing a little presentation can help in a lot of ways. To again go back to that like buy-in and ownership that we were talking about, like right from the start of the onboarding process, but also throughout the time as well, because that's fine. I might not be the best person to answer that question, or I might not be the best person to explain it. And I know for me, it's being a manager is very humbling, but it's, creating that opportunity to be able to speak to those different folks. I know, across my team, very much intergenerational, folks that are coming from a lot of different backgrounds. And so getting to leverage some of those different backgrounds is great. I mean, that's the beauty of diversity, right? You're getting these different perspectives. You're having a much more kind of holistic view of what's going on. I can answer the question differently because someone needs it to be explained differently. And, happy to do that. It sometimes takes a little bit more work. Yeah, it's going to take a little bit more work, a little bit more prep, a little bit more of like getting to know. But I know it is definitely created a much more kind of like holistic experience and allowed them to also be part of that process.
Perfect. Thank you both. Amber, did you have something that you wanted to add?
I did. So just really quickly, I transitioned from finance into tech to the SaaS industry, which is 100 miles an hour. They move so quickly. We are moving very quickly. But when you go from an email with a 2 to 3 business day response rate to a Slack message that needs usually an hour response rate, things move very different. And my biggest learning that I want to pass on to anyone that I think is relevant to any industry is never to assume that people know, because of those backgrounds that Rachel was just talking about and the different experiences that people bring to the table. Someone can have 25 years of experience in a business and still not know what Calendly is. And it's just being mindful of when you're talking about those things or when you're walking through some of those platforms, just to be really mindful that not everyone is aware and not to assume, so that they can always be sure that they're in alignment and no one wants to ask the question of what something is in a big room. So just to kind of think through that whenever you're going through those onboarding journeys, or even in just a business call or whatever it might look like.
I love that. Thank you so much for adding that in, Amber. So we've finished with the main portion of our Q&A, but I do have some questions in the Q&A as well as some pre-submitted questions. So Rachel, I'm going to go to you for this first Q&A question just because you were the one who was chatting about ghosting in the workplace. So this question has kind of a couple different ideas to it, but really at the essence is if a particular role is really open for a long time, should you send rejection emails to all candidates not taken forward before the role is closed, wait for it to close, and then also if you're let me see. I just want to make sure I have this right. On the other hand, if a delay in sending rejection emails is made, is it better to just ghost candidates or to still send rejection emails even after a couple of months of keeping them in limbo? So if you don't mind answering that, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and some other folks kind of spoke to it more clearly as well. And so I'm going to echo kind of what's already been kind of commented on there too. It's, yeah, if you have those immediate folks, that you're not interested in moving to the next step, do everyone a favor and close that loop for them. So it's probably, it could be a large percentage, usually, it gets lower and lower and is smaller and smaller, going down that funnel through the recruitment process. So probably a majority of those, you can close the loop on that. I understand there's a sensitivity, the person mentioned, from kind of like a mental health perspective, like hearing that. I think, I think it really depends on how those emails are worded. And I think there's a craft to that as well. Because it's not, and people are going to have to respond how they're going to respond, right? It's not, we don't have the ability to manage, everyone's kind of reactions and emotions to that. And I think I would say kind of feel the release from that as well. I think closing the loop can be a lot better than than having that perpetually ghosted experience. I'd say that's a little bit from my personal opinion. I'd love to, hear Amber to kind of speak to that as well from her perspective. But I do think that it is still best to close the loop. Now, maybe this asks the bigger question of, why is this taking several months? And maybe that's where we need to, kind of relook at that too, of, what is that timeline? And trust me, I've been in that too. I've seen that. I know that it's not, a one and done thing. This is a challenging thing. What can we do on our best to minimize that process? So the email isn't going out several months later, but it's, 6 or 8 weeks later. But yeah, Amber, would love to hear your addition to that as well.
Yeah, I think that I align with you 100%. Close the loop, and close it in a mindful way, right? If you were in that position, what would feel good? Nothing is going to feel great with rejection, right? But what's better than that is this is still a person that's still trying to work on finding a position or a job and to find their next journey, and just being really mindful of it and respectful of that too, because I think there's a degree of respect for their time that they have dedicated towards going through your process. We actually decided to be a little more playful in our offboarding letter, which I encourage you to do the same, to copy it. Don't reinvent the wheel. Take all the credit for it. But on our rejection letter is actually it highlights facts of other really, really successful business players that had failed several times before they made their great break. I think we spoke to like Disney and Dr. Seuss and someone else, and it's like how many times they failed before they actually were seen in the successful journey. Now, find what is relevant to your industry so that it makes sense. But you can still say something of like a really insightful message or a valuable message, but also say like, don't forget, like don't let this discourage you. This is just the spark. If that's where you want to go, if fits for your business, ChatGPT can help you with that as well. But I do think that even being mindful of that candidate journey, because if they decide to come back, or if they have someone that we really want talent to join the team and someone else is going through that process, they might be that person, that word of mouth of like, oh, I had a horrible experience. They just ghosted me. I wouldn't apply there. Or, oh, they actually seem like they really care. And this is kind of like, I thought this was a fun thing. Or even just going back, we've had people respond to that email and say, I really needed this. I really needed to read this. And I really want to thank you for it. And for us, it's like, we weren't able to give them a job, but at least we were able to give them a little bit of hope. And you can do that if you want, and it takes just a few minutes and then you automate it.
Yeah. And I would say too, this is going to take a couple more minutes, but for those that just applied and you never talked to them, automated email 100%. Like there's no, you haven't exchanged time and effort. Anytime a candidate has given you a little bit more of their time, you got to take this next step forward. So whether that's maybe it's just tailoring that template. Maybe it's specifically calling out, we really appreciated this about you or whatever, in that letter. Oftentimes it might make sense to pick up the phone or jump on a quick call to kind of explain that. It really depends on how much into the process it's been. And that can be uncomfortable and that can be hard, but I think that adds a lot of value to that. Just because, they have taken the time to do that and they kind of are just looking for that same courtesy from you as well.
Perfect. I love that. I love the whole human and personable aspect of it, even if it's a topic or sensitive that's kind of hard to, or topic that's kind of sensitive to get through. So I love that. One more question in our Q&A, Rachel, that we have on here that I'm hoping you could answer is a little bit more technical. So it's, if adding on tools to JazzHR through GoCo because of our integration, who does that billing come from?
Yeah, so we have JazzHR has a vast marketplace of partners to connect with. So yeah, whether it's criteria, I think that was mentioned there in the Q&A, that is an assessment tool, or something like a background check provider, something like a verified first, those are all going to be billed directly through that provider. So whether, however you have your setup with, JazzHR and GoCo right now, that is going to be something separate that's billed directly through them. A lot of those have a direct integration with JazzHR so that you're going to be able to, run those assessments, see the results right within a candidate profile, which is amazing. But that billing is going to be done through the partner themselves.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rachel. I'm going to share my screen one more time. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about GoCo, JazzHR, our integration, just the world of HR technology as a whole, feel free to go to goco.io coffee. If you schedule a meeting in the next 2 weeks, then we will send you a coffee gift card on us if you meet with our team. Rachel, Amber, any last words you want to say before we go?
I mean, consistency and think like a marketer.
Yeah, and it's okay if you don't get it right the first time, and nothing is going to always be the same way. So just reassess and try again.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I saw someone said they missed the codes in the follow-up email that I'll send with the recording. I will also send the codes, so be on the lookout for that. And I appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your week. Bye, everyone.